Hello, my beautiful people. Thank you for taking time stopping by my channel. My name is Kristen. Today, I have my book reviews for the books that I read in the month of January. So, I feel like I had a lot of reading. There was some things that were just outstanding and a couple that were even 5 star, and then I actually had a 1 star and a 2 star this month, and so it was a big variety. I also picked up a children's book, which I usually do not review these, but just in case, I'm a youth director and I like to read bedtime stories to even teenagers. And this book right here, the book with no pictures by BJ Novak, it is true to its word. It has no pictures, but it basically says you have to say every single thing on the page, and then it has a bunch of nonsensical fun stuff. So, just if you are in the market for a new funsy children's book, or you need to read to your class, whatever age they might be, I think this is going to work okay for teenagers even. So, I wanted to go ahead and mention it because I really like it and I'm very happy with it. I also read a book that was sent to me free for review, so I'd like to kind of start with that one. Also, Katharine Campbell wrote Love, Treachery, and Other Terrors, and it's a really beautiful artwork copy too. And this, I have to start out by disclaiming that when I first kind of heard about it, with a premise of medieval and fairies and kind of magical and whimsical, and I love that kind of stuff, as you know if you've watched me for a while. So I was kind of thinking this was going to be a fairy tale for adults, if you will, like a allegory of some kind, and that was kind of the feel I had for it. So let me set you straight. This, I would much more classify this as a middle grade book that is intended for the young reader, and the humor is very and violence and you know relationship, sexuality, everything is very G rated. So this would be perfectly acceptable for elementary age, even. I would say definitely for any middle grade or middle schoolers. And the humor is very, very witty. It's a little bit expected, like, if you've kind of heard some of the old knock knock jokes over and over and over again, but they're still classic and funny, if you will, those kind of things, and just very creative in its dialogue and writing. So the storyline is basically, this is a world where fairies exist, and the fairies are meant to help and aid humanity become better and learn morals. But humans are not very good at learning morals, and so a couple fairies are very put out with the fact that their lessons never really seem to make a lot of difference to them. So they decide they are going to kind of cause trouble instead. They're going to be the mischief fairies, and the fairies don't like that, and so we start with them as kind of exiled. And of course, it wouldn't be much of a story if they were all locked up for the whole story. So it's kind of the story of kind of the battling fairies, and kind of the premise of doing good and doing what's right and all those kind of issues. So I really appreciated it. I love the messages underlining it. Again, I think the dialogue and the humor is very witty. If, as long as you're approaching it from it's not meant to be sophisticated adult, it's meant for the younger reader, then it is fabulous, and I highly recommend picking it up. I think it would be great for even a teacher to read to younger students, and you could even talk about some of the moral lessons. Next, I read my book of the month, The Removed by Brandon Hobson, and I have to say, unfortunately, that I didn't really enjoy this book a lot. It also wasn't, I think, what I was expecting, which maybe is not its fault. I know I read the cover excerpt on my book of the month, which I'll put a little card up there if you would like to go back and check it out. But basically, I got halfway through the book and I said, gosh, I feel like nothing's happened. And I went back and I reread the front cover, and like literally we were at the point of the front cover and I was right at the halfway point of the book, and I was like, oh my gosh, it took half the book just to catch us up to where the premise of the book is supposed to start. I mean, it's very slow moving, but it is a story of a family that tragically lost a young boy who was at the wrong place at the wrong time and was shot by a police officer, predominantly because he was the Indian, the Native American, and the Caucasian white boy was the one with the gun, but he had been targeted unjustly. And I thought it was going to be a lot of focus on that, but really it was a focus of any family that would have to be going through such a tragic loss and grief, and each person, it went through each person's focus of how they were dealing with their grief. And there was Native American spirituality and wrestling, and then there was a darkened land that had this mystical that was interesting, and that was probably the most interesting part of the story, but in the end it just didn't personally work for me. I just wanted more conclusions, or I guess lessons from it. So unfortunately, I mean, it had some interesting premises or whatnot, so I'd give it a 2-star, but I would not recommend this to very many people. It would have to be somebody who had a very specific interest for me to bring that one up. And then I'll go ahead and get my 1-star out of the way. And that was Burying the Honeysuckle Girls by Emily Carpenter. And this book has been on my to be read pile longer than any other book, and so it was my goal to read it this year, and I said I'm just going to read it in January right off the bat. It's an interesting premise in that this little girl, as she's dying, her mother says these mysterious words about waiting for the Honeysuckle Girls, and if they don't come find you, you go find her. And so she's questing, like, what does this mean? And she's dealing with images of kind of not hallucinations really, but visions that she's under, and she's dealing with some drug issues and trying to get that out of the mix, and there's schizophrenia that comes into the picture with past history, and it seems like it should be really good. But about halfway through, I decided I kind of wanted to know what was happening, but I just started skimming and almost didn't finish the book, and it really wasn't that satisfying of an ending. And so this is a 1-star, y'all. I'm not going to take any more time even talking about it. Just very disappointing to have wanted to read it for like 4 or 5 years and then not have it live up. It happens. This was a Dollar Tree book, A Whole Life. I think it's a beautiful book. Robert C. Thaler, I guess is how you maybe say his name. And it is a book set in Austria. And this reminded me very much. It's a very short book, very easy read. And it does not have a lot of plot. It is basically a man recounting his life and what makes his life meaningful, and a lot of it comes off of the land. It was very much kind of in the vein of reading Thoreau's Walden and those kind of explanations about the landscaping and comparing like the ruggedness and climate of the environment to his life. And so it was a beautiful little quick read. It wasn't like, it was a good solid 3.5. I'm glad I read it, but I probably will not keep it or read it again kind of thing. But for $1 at the Dollar Tree, it was worthy. Then my classic that I did not read last year, that was on my schedule to read last year, was Mutiny on the Bounty. And I said, poor Mutiny on the Bounty was the only classic I hadn't gotten to. So I picked it on up. And it was a pretty good read, y'all. I really enjoyed reading this. I may read it again sometime, although to be honest, I am soft-hearted and reading about things that are a lot of fighting and violence. And, I was about 100 pages in this and I said, gosh, I'd want a mutiny too. It is based on some historical facts about a ship that had a captain that, captains are a little notorious for being dictators in sometimes not helpful ways, although they need to be a little bit. That's what makes them good captains, right? So it is the adventures of a ship and the people on it. And the fascinating thing is a lot of the mutineers, they kind of were swept in. It was kind of a more spur of the moment and less planned out thing. And so that wrestling back and forth and how the trials and follow up of a mutiny and all that. It's based on history, so it's pretty interesting. So I actually really enjoyed all that. I like high seas adventures, and so this one, not a bad classic. Next, I read A Woman Is No Man, Etaf Rum, and one of my sons gave me this for Christmas. I was very excited to read it. It is the story of, actually, kind of what I love about this book is that it has like 3 generations. It has predominantly the mother and the daughter, but then it also gives us some glimpses into the grandmother. So you see this history of how women are treated, or their places in, I think they came from Palestine. So they were more like, not property would be a harsh word, but you know what I'm saying. Like, the woman herself does not have the power. And so they're immigrating to America and trying to kind of find their place in Brooklyn. And what does that mean? And how does that change? Does that change anything? Are there still the stigmas? And it was just particularly fascinating, particularly the daughter, who is kind of the first generation American, coming from trying to honor a past history and culture and what's good about that, and then how to navigate into a new culture that maybe expects some new things from her. So I really, really enjoyed this. It wasn't necessarily a 5-star for me, but it was definitely a solid 4. I just really was invested in it and just learned something from it, and just really appreciated it. Thought it was a very easy to read, and the dialogue felt very genuine and very like this probably has happened before, even though this particular exact storyline is fictitious. Next, I read Rainbow Rowell's Landline, and this is another one I got at the Dollar Tree, and I am super excited, and 4.5, maybe even 5 stars on this one. I knew that it was a romance where a woman is talking to her husband of the past on a landline that's kind of got this magical ability, time travel. But I don't want to give a whole lot away because it's a pretty short book. But it's basically a romance relationship book talking about what does it mean if you have the opportunity to go back and change something. Should you or should you not? Or how does that apply to now? Or what does it make you rethink about the future, knowing what you know about the past or what you can learn from the past? How does that now change who you are in the present? And I love that kind of time travel, paradoxism, butterfly effect. Is this going to change this? And all of that kind of stuff. Plus, I grew up in the 70s when we had landlines. So, I could totally appreciate hanging out on a landline. I think that would be cool nowadays. I definitely don't even have that option, right? So, if you're wanting a lighter read, particularly with a romantic tint or with a little time travel paradox, totally loved that book. Good book. The last 2 books, 5-star, loved them. Here they are, my top reading for the month. First, I read the second in the Forgotten Library Labyrinth books, the Carlos Ruiz Zafon. This one's called The Angel's Game. The first one is The Shadow of the Wind. It's basically a mysterious book, labyrinth, mystical place that when you go there, you pick a book that is not to be forgotten, and it picks you and you pick it, and you are its protector and guardian, and it to you in a way. And so this story is a gentleman who is an author, and he's kind of down on his luck, not getting a whole lot of commissions or revenue, and a mysterious publisher wants him to write a mysterious book. And in this, he has his trip to the library and receives a book that is just eerily similar to his own life and is giving him clues into what's going on, and can he figure out the mystery of what he's really writing about and what he's really trying to do. And it's very fast paced. I love the writing style. It just sucks you in and is a great time. And I'm looking forward to reading. I think there's 3 in the series, or maybe more, but there's at least 3. And the only thing I will say is this one was much more graphic and violent and more death and descriptive violence than the first one. And so, again, that's not always my thing. I'd rather have it be like, then all hell breaks loose and they don't come back. That's enough for me. My mind can fill in the blanks. So that maybe ticks it down to 4.5 instead of the 5, but it's really a 5-star book, and that's my only disclaimer to what I think would make it even better, because I didn't think it even needed as much as it had. Lots of action, lots going on. And then my other 5-star is my nonfiction, and it is called Cork Dork, and it's Bianca Bosker, and she is a journalist and writer and author, and she went on a quest to change up her career from being strictly a journalist to being a sommelier, and that's the vineyard steward, head waiter, connoisseur person who is extremely expert at wine. And so she just goes into this just with a really good writing style that is very journalistic and approachable, and feels like you're talking to a friend who's explaining all of these details to you. Multiple times as I'm reading this, my mouth is watering as I am actually almost tasting the different wines and tastings that she is, and the way she is explaining like how you take exams, how you select bottles, how you have to, process all these different records. It was just very clear and often funny, and the people that she comes in contact with are just very eccentric and eclectic and fun. And so it was just a really, really fascinating romp, learning a lot of things. If you have any interest in wine or upscale restaurants or any of those kind of stuff, I think you would probably really enjoy this. So you don't recommend nonfiction to every single person, but if you have any interest in those things, that book was really, really awesome. Total 5-star for me. So those are my books for January. I look forward to coming back with my ones for February. I've got some more that I'm super excited to read, and hopefully will be, not a disappointment, but if it is, I'll let you know that. I always give my honest thoughts. So thank you for taking time. Leave me a comment if you have read any of these, if you want to read any of them now, or if you are reading something fantastic, amazing, and particularly think I should check that out. I would really love for you to list that in the comments. Y'all have an awesome day. Take care.